And it was so interesting this week to watch God's work and watch church break out on a football field. I've been telling you guys this for years. Church breaks out on a football field all the time, but it broke out differently and way better this week. It was so interesting to see the reaction of our media, the reaction of other sports people. It was so interesting to see the reaction of opposing teams. That really struck me this week. That in the midst of all of this happening, opposing teams just went away. And it became about brotherhoods walking across a field. And in this story, I think we're lucky that we're this far removed from this. It was such a tenuous week this week for so many of us, waiting and wondering and hoping. And this is just one man's story of going through something like this. And we wait in a very uncomfortable place, and it's hard to be in that place. And so I looked at the scriptures about, all right, what the heck am I supposed to do with this Sunday? And then I watched Peter go to Cornelius. And the story that we heard in Acts, I want you to read it again at the end of the service or doing communion. There's a story about Peter going and breaking through and going to the other side of the field. Jews and Gentiles didn't speak. They didn't associate with one another, and now Cornelius' family is reached out to, and life is brought to him by Peter. When we talk about the baptism of our Lord, we talk about the baptism of God's love breaking in to a moment of potential crisis, but also potential normalcy, and then also potential joy or potential risk, as Peter lived into. And as I watched Monday night unfold, I watched something that I've, as a sportsman, never seen before, and many of us haven't. I watched them pray on ESPN. I've never seen that before. I watched critical care happen right away, and EMS responders that I'm so blessed to spend so much time with start right away to do and be the hands of God for Damar on the field. I watched his broken brothers make a shield around him so that no millennial, with all due respect to millennials, would video this and throw it up on every social media site. I watched people come out and put a tarp over so they could work. I watched them transport him to the hospital. I watched prayer break out. I watched grown, large men cry. By the way, that's a good example, guys. We can do that and show those emotions. And when I watched, I think the thing that struck me the most was when their coach walked across the field and said to our coach, this is not about this game. Whatever you want to do, we will do, and we got your back. And community came together in that moment. And what I saw break out right there was life. And that's the word that I keep using and going back to this week. We saw life break out. Now, already this week, we've seen some parts that we've moved back from that. You know, you watch that on ESPN, and then you turn on CNN, and you're watching people argue about power to get nothing done during the year in Congress. And yet, on Monday night, we started to see life break out, and we've seen it break out throughout the week. And these stories that we see each and every day, it's rare that so many millions of people are all part of the same story. But each and every day, these stories are happening all the time. If you ask our responders, if you ask John, who does this in Newstead on a daily basis, to go out and reach out to people who are having these types of crises, these are the things that are happening each and every day as brokenness happens in our world and our lives. And that's what I think we realized this week. I can tackle somebody pretty hard, and sometimes my heart stops. And that's scary as hell. That life could be that fragile in the midst of a game. It's supposed to be fun. And yet life is that fragile. I think Damar's going in this incredible direction. And we're so thankful for that, for him, for his family, for our community. But in Annette's case, she lost her daughter, and the medical care that worked so incredibly well in this case, from CPR to AED to transport to cooling to neurological to heart, got him to where he is today. But sometimes that's not there. So I brought Annette in just to share a little bit more about her story and some of the ways that she brought life to a situation that was very similar in ways. You got to hold that close to your mouth. Okay. It's terrible.
Good morning. I could probably speak really loud. Is that what you're saying? Yes, my name is Annette Adamsack, and I was from Akron. I got a question for you guys, though. Have you guys ever thought about what your plan for life was? I mean, think about it. When you were in high school, or even before that, when you were young, when you were 3, 4, 5 years old, how many of you said, I know what I want to be when I grow up? Yeah, okay. I wanted to be a veterinarian, except by the time I hit 14, 15, I got bit by the I like boys bug. Yeah, well, I'm still working on trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be when I grow up. Do you think that everything that you have planned, that God is okay with? I don't. And I don't mean that in any bad way. What I mean is that the things that you have planned, sit back, and I bet you God has something else in mind. Okay? Like many of you, Monday night, I was glued to the TV. I was debating whether or not I was going to do dishes, which they didn't get done until 11 o'clock. But Monday night hit me really hard. It was brutal. There wasn't a moment when I could actually sit back and say, I can turn this off. I was glued to the TV. Why? Well, you see, when Damar went down and I watched him collapse, I watched my own heart fall out of my chest and break into a million pieces. And it's not because I know him personally. It's not because I know his family. It's because I went through that. I've been there, I've done that. And my friend Linda here has been there, done that too. And I'm going to give her a chance to tell you about her story in half of this, okay? But with Emily was 14. She was on her own sports field. It was different. I mean, we didn't have national TV. We didn't have it broadcasted live across the country. She wasn't playing football. She was playing soccer. And it was a practice, not even a game. But on that field, there were 20 or so kids. There were coaches. There were teammates. And there were parents. There were family. They were friends. And Emily came running past me, chasing a ball, and said, Mom, everything's going black. And she collapsed in my arms. We didn't know back in 2009 what a sudden cardiac arrest looked like. Now, there's a big difference between a heart attack and a sudden cardiac arrest. A sudden cardiac arrest, or an SCA, is when your heart stops. It just stops beating, and there's no blood flow. And when it stopped, she stopped. All her organs stopped. And she stopped breathing and took her last breath in my arms before we could get CPR started, before an AED was available. And Lord knows it was way before she got transported to the hospital. However, once the first responders were finally called, they did everything in their power to prevent a tragedy from happening. It just wasn't in God's plans. So my experience and what I thought was going to be the rest of my life was not what I had planned, but rather what God had planned. So I didn't have that chance to welcome my daughter home from the hospital or to say, hey, you made it. Congratulations, let's go Bills, We didn't get that. But what I did get was a gift from God, and that was to train 25,000 high school kids in a 4-year period in how to save a life. I advocated to make sure that New York State became the 22nd school in the nation to make it mandatory that kids, before they graduated in high school, learned how to do CPR. But what I want you to understand right now is that there are two sides to this coin of life. And I'm going to pass this over to Linda because she is a sudden cardiac arrest survivor. Hold on.
Annette, that's not fair to speak like that and hand me the microphone. Thank you for having me today. And this is sometimes harder to talk about than I plan, and this is all off the cuff today, so thank you for having me. My name is Linda Marino. I'm from East Amherst and got to know Annette through my work with the American Heart Association. But my message today is that 7 years ago, I was driving down Transit Road, and I suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. My daughter, Claire, was 2 at the time in the back seat. It was just us in my car. And the story is remarkable, but the point I want to make about it today is that complete strangers stepped in to save my life. A man ran my car down because it was going so slow down Transit Road on a Saturday afternoon. 2 of my heroes were pumping gas across 4 lanes of traffic and came running to perform that CPR. Now, I lived the recovery that Damar is going through, so I didn't say this out loud, but I had hope. I knew what he was going through was normal. I know where he's at today is normal. I know what it's like to wake up and have confusion and not be able to talk because a trache's been down your throat. But I couldn't take my eyes off the television on Monday night. My husband, on the other hand, couldn't watch any of it. He's beyond traumatized from the situation. I had the easy job to recover. Everyone else had the tough job. But my point is that you never know when you might be someone's hero. And I've been sharing my story since my cardiac arrest because I'm here for a reason. And I want all of you to sit here and think, when would that opportunity, when might you be presented with an opportunity to step in and save someone's life? And I think as awful as this situation is, the one thing that Annette and I have been talking about for years, and especially this week, is that, wow, this really brings to light not only what a cardiac arrest is, because it was so confused, and it still is, with a heart attack. And 70% of cardiac arrests happen outside of a hospital. That means someone's going to have to step in, and it's usually not that there's a first responder nearby. It's one of you. So my message today is, I'm here because of complete heroes in my life and angels. I swear, the story, it gets even crazier if you want to know the details. But the point is, I hope that you can take something from this, share our stories, share the message, and let's do some good with this horrible tragedy. And by the way, I have real hope for a continued recovery because I was in even a longer period without immediate attention, and nobody knew if I would have brain function or whatnot or how I'd come out of it. But here I am to hopefully, I don't know, maybe Damar and I someday will go share our stories together and try to make a difference. But thank you again.
I just want to close with this. Nobody had plans for Monday night to have it happen the way it did. Emily collapsed on a Monday night. So my Monday nights are really goofed up, okay? And I know in my heart that God didn't have plans. Well, I didn't have the same plans that God did. He didn't say, hey, look, I'm going to work through you and I'm going to teach you how to teach people to save lives. And I was like, I just wanted to raise kids and have a good time. But, we're going to make it a little bit different. I don't think that any of us thought that a Monday night football game would bring the world to their knees in prayer. But you know what? God did. And he worked through all the first responders and all the paramedics and all the doctors, and he worked through the teammates and the family and the players and the opposing players. and he brought attention to the importance of prayer. And I don't think it's ironic that Damar's number is 3. And if you think about it, the Holy Trinity is 3. Thank you.
Thanks, ladies. I hope that what you hear in the midst of what this community's gone through, what Annette's gone through, what you guys have gone through, I hope you hear life in that. And those stories ended very differently, but life still came out of it. When I shared with my daughter, who's watching from home today, when I shared with her that Annette was going to be here, I was telling her about, remember when you took hands-only CPR in school? And she said, yes. I said, that's because of Annette. And that's because of Emily. So my hope and my prayer for us as a community now, when people have asked me several times, is how does an event like this change us? Why does this happen to one person and not the construction worker on Christmas Day in Ohio that had sudden cardiac arrest and didn't get that care and died from that? And there's no T-shirts made for him. There's no Ohio love for him. I wish I had an answer for that. The only thing that I can come up with is what Annette says, that God can use some of these things in different ways that we don't expect and we didn't see coming, to make sure that as we move forward, we are changed by things like this. Cornelius' family was changed because Peter walked across the field to him. I think a lot of us as Bills fans were changed because we saw that this game is just a game. And even though we get a little intense on Sundays, we got to remember that. Or we get a little intense where somebody in this room saw the Patriots buses going to the stadium today and wished flat tires on them. No. But as these tragedies unfold, and they will more, my hope is that you and I will bring life to that. The baptism that we received was permission for us to go into the world and in many and various ways, through your presence, through your prayer, through sharing your gifts, and maybe literally through your hands, bringing life into the world. May we live into that life and share it abundantly. Amen.